A good Erev Shabbos and Mazel Tov. You might think, that by now I'd be getting tired of talking about Matan Torah, Ma'amad Har Sinai, the Jewish people standing together at Mount Sinai to receive the Torah, in terms of a wedding. You would be incorrect. I'm not a prophet, I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but as of now, I have not yet run out of steam on this idea. And this year I even found some new material. When we studied together the book of Job a few years back, we came across the verse, Mi bisari echezeh Elokah. From my human existence, I come to understand my relationship with God better. And the reverse is also resonant. From my human interactions, perhaps I can get a better perspective on my connection with God. That's what the whole marriage idea in this context is all about. 3 years ago, when pretty much none of us had heard of COVID yet, we were blessed at our synagogue to have an ufruf on Shabbos Parshas Yisro, this Shabbos. A great thing for writing drashas about marriage and Mount Sinai. In fact, this was also a brilliant choice of time, because if that bride and groom would have waited 2 or 3 weeks later, they would have gotten married with 2 witnesses and a photographer, and that would have been it, instead of the wedding that they had planned and dreamed of. That Shabbos, Parshas Yisro 2020, before everything came unglued there for a little while, we talked extensively about the comparisons between a chuppah and the unique historical event we will experience once again this Shabbos when we stand and we hear the giving of the 10 Commandments read. So to refresh our memories on this topic just a little bit, the main theme in standing together at Sinai, just like marriage, is the joy of commitment. The joy of commitment. Now you might think the opposite is true. Maybe it's when I don't have to be responsible for anything, when there's no rules. Maybe that's when I can truly be happy. Ask someone who has nowhere to be. Ask someone who has nothing expected of them, no accountability, how happy they are. Not so happy, as it turns out. To commit oneself, to enter into a covenant, an agreement, a contract, relationship, in giving over a part of ourselves, that is where we truly become whole, complete human beings. Among the verses that we hear in the Torah portion of Yisro is the one that said that the Jewish people stood tachtit hahar, tachtes hahar, literally under the mountain. So the sages tried to visualize exactly what this is. How does it mean? Why does it use this language in particular? And they come up with the notion that God suspended the mountain of Mount Sinai over our heads. Kafa alehem har kegigis is the phrase that the Talmud uses. The commentaries come up with a number of insights from what this might mean, but far and away my favorite is the mountain over our heads was like a chuppah. We, the Jewish people, were the bride. God, as it were the groom. Moshe was the officiating rabbi. The Torah itself was the ketubah, the wedding contract. Different Gemara in Tainus compares a phrase from Shir Hashirim, Song of Songs, about the day of one's chuppah as the day of giving the Torah. B'yom chasonaso ze matan Torah, says Rabbi Shimon Gamliel in the Mishnah there. What is the deeper meaning here? The day of giving the Torah, when God and the Jewish people committed to one another forever. The Jewish people said, famously, Na'aseh v'nishma. We will do and we will hear or understand. Not what you would expect. The logical way to say it is we will understand and then we will do it. That makes a lot of sense, but that's not Torah. And while we're making a comparison, that's not really marriage either. Dating is nishma v'na'aseh. As long as I understand it, as long as it makes sense to me, I think it's good, I'll continue. When you're ready for commitment to turn the corner and begin a new life under the chuppah, then it becomes na'aseh v'nishma. I will do and I will understand. That means I'm in. I'm committed. I'm staying. Now I'll try to understand. What I understand, good. What I don't understand, I'll try harder. Maybe I will, maybe I won't. But that doesn't affect my commitment. That is what the Jewish people said as we prepared to receive the Torah. That's what a Jewish couple affirms under the chuppah, at least in the Or Sameach Shita, every day of their married lives. When we start teaching a child Torah from the youngest age, the first verse they learn might be, Torah tziva lanu Moshe morasha kehilat Yaakov. The Torah that Moshe commanded us is the inheritance of the congregation of Jacob. Gemara in Sanhedrin highlights that morasha and me'urasa are cognates. So they read the verse as Torah tziva lanu Moshe, the Torah that Moshe commanded us, not morasha, but me'urasa. It betroths the congregation of Yaakov, the Jewish people. That takes us right into the whole wedding imagery, the mountain over our heads as the chuppah, Torah, or the tablets as the ketubah, Moshe the officiant, and God and the Jewish people wed in an eternal covenant. In fact, the Maharam Mirottenberg understands the words said under the chuppah, Harei at mikudeshatli, behold, you are married to me, Kedas Moshe v'Yisrael. Just as the Jewish people are wedded to God through Torah, that's how we, two partners under the chuppah, are married to each other. We know very well also that breaking a glass is an essential custom at a chuppah. It's to recall that as long as we're still exiled from Jerusalem, that all is not right in the world, even at our happiest moments, we recall the exile. And Rabbi Soloveitchik mentions yet another connection between breaking the glass at the chuppah and Mount Sinai. As his student, Rav Hershel Schachter, writes, the first tablets were given with great fanfare and publicity. Ultimately, these first tablets were broken. The second set of tablets were given without all the big tararam, privately. Those were the ones that lasted. This highlights the idea of humility, modesty, tznius, which should be a facet of a relationship between two married partners, just the same as between God and the Jewish people. Rav Schachter mentions a talk that the Rav gave in the 1950s to say that usually the relationship between God and the Jewish people is not on open display. It's rather betzanua, it's out of the public gaze. From time to time, there is a public display, if you will, of connection, such as the great drama and spectacle that went along with Maimad Har Sinai, the revelation of the Torah at Mount Sinai. Once in a while, there is an exception to the general rules of conduct, when God feels, so to speak, that it's necessary to do things in a public way with high visibility. But those are once-in-a-while moments, as we're called upon from time to time to demonstrate our faith and commitment in a highly visible and public way. Truth is, most of the time, it's more off the radar. But not to the couple, not to a married couple. On wedding anniversaries, there's commemorations, anywhere from remembering the day, saying happy anniversary, to cards, to looking at albums, look how young we were, to out-and-out parties for the landmark anniversaries. Gemara in Shabbos records the view that the giving of the Torah, our wedding, so to speak, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, took place on Shabbos. So in fact, every Shabbat is a kind of wedding anniversary between God and the Jewish people. That helps us understand why the Amidah on Shabbos mentions Mount Sinai. We say, you placed a crown of glory on Moshe's head when he stood before you on Mount Sinai. Recalling that is like looking in the album. It's like a couple celebrating their anniversary by retelling the story. Now, I have heard, because I do sometimes look on the internet, and I've also read this in books, so I've seen it of good authority, that marriage is not always easy. Standing by that commitment at all times, not always a walk in the park. Once, a wise senior member of our Kehillah told me that it's really the first 53 years of marriage that are the most challenging. That took me a while to get my head around. By the time I figured it out and understood what was being said, it was a couple months down the road and I got an update. You know, it's really the first 54 years of marriage that are most challenging, and so on. Thankfully, there is wisdom to help. Some of the books out there are written by therapists and researchers with decades of experience and insight. Problem is, it's a little bit of a challenge to get a couple who's about to be married or recently married and ready for some support to read a 400-page book with footnotes and everything. So I came across a book last year called The 4 Habits of Joy-Filled Marriages, drawing on the writings of some of the most respected names in this field. This book has 102 pages, and it's small, fits in your pocket. That's a reasonable ask. The authors have 4 suggestions, 4 pretty simple things to do to orient ourselves to find joy in the commitment of marriage. Of course, they're talking about spouses, but as I'm reading this, I'm thinking, hey, this applies very well to our relationship with Hashem, with God also. What are these 4 habits? Quite simply, spend time together, listen for emotion, appreciate daily, find a rhythm. Great. You can imagine for yourselves how those fit into marriage on a human level, person to person. Let's highlight them for just a moment in the context of the Jewish people's relation to Hashem. First one, spend time together. Okay, the chapter is really called Play Together. I'm finessing it a little bit. What they mean is do things you enjoy together that make your life better. Not just a chore, something you have to do because you have to do it, but something that makes you feel good. In one sentence, to all those people who come to Shul just on Yom Kippur, I always want to say, if you're coming one day out of the year, please come on Simchas Torah. If one day is all you can spare, it's fine. But please, come and eat with us, dance with us, sing with us, say l'chaim with us. When you spend time together, if it's an obligation, it's probably going to feel like an obligation. If it's fun, you'll want to do more. You'll want to come again soon. Tell your friends, Simchas Torah. That's the time to come. Second suggestion, listen for emotion. There are a number of subsections to this chapter. The first one is communication is useless if your relational circuits are not on. Gotta think about that for a minute. Communication, even if you have communication, it doesn't do anything if the relation circuits are not on. People do not like the boring, stilted language of the Siddur. Fine, say your own prayers, but let it mean something. If you have something to express because you want to form a relationship, it doesn't matter so much who wrote it, you or someone else. Did you ever hear in human history when someone wrote a love note and borrowed a few lines from a famous poem to get their point across? Or straight up had someone else write their love letters? Cyrano much. It worked because the relational circuits were on. If your relational switch is turned to on, whatever you say has meaning. Third thing, appreciate daily. A Jew, when he or she wakes up in the morning, before washing hands, before getting out of bed, before coffee, before shul, before anything, the first words out of our mouths are, Modeh ani lefanecha. I thank you. In Hebrew, I is actually the second word. Thank is the first word. Where you go with the rest of the day is your business, but don't say Yiddishkeit. Didn't start off your day with appreciation. Fourth of these 4 points, nurture a rhythm. You sense get any sense of rhythm in Judaism? Today is Sunday, the first day of Shabbos. Today is Monday, the second day of Shabbos. That's how we conclude our morning prayers every day, even on Shabbos. Hayom Yom Shabbos Kodesh. Today is the Holy Sabbath, because we're in the weekly rhythm. Next Shabbos is Shabbos Mevarchim. We're blessing the new month of Adar, the 12th month in the year. As soon as you put the gragers away, clean up the Hamantashen crumbs, we're cleaning for Pesach. Then we're counting the Omer until Shavuos. Then 3 weeks during the summer. Then Elul, preparing for Rosh Hashanah, and so on. Rhythm, I think the Jewish people got that knocked. We always have something to look forward to, always have a chance coming up to connect, to feel connected, to express good wishes, to strengthen ourselves and each other, even so far as the community of our people around the world. So this is what life is about, the joy of commitment and the commitment of joy and the commitment to joy. That's what we're experiencing. That is what we're celebrating this Shabbos of Yisro, of standing together, ke'ish echad belev echad, as Rashi explains, like one being with one heart. As we take that feeling forward, it should only increase and deepen the feelings of responsibility, of love, of commonality, and of connection among the Jewish people wherever we live in the world, and of course, with us and our beloved, as in Ani ledodi v'dodi li, I am my beloved and my beloved is mine, in that eternal covenant between us and HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A good Shabbos and Mazel Tov.